Hey guys, this is Camford15 back at it with another video for you guys. And I'm back with another Fairy Tail arc review as I go over some previous arcs I've already reviewed, but you know, just give more detail than some things and stuff like that. But yes, now we are on the next major arc of the series, and that is one of my favorite. It is in one of my top 3 favorite arcs of the Fairy Tail anime or the series in general, and that is the Edolas arc, where we see a lot of development out of some characters that we wouldn't think would have gotten development, which is mostly development for Happy and Carla. But excuse me, as we get into this review, I'm gonna give the rundowns of everything here and stuff like that. So yeah, now the Edolas arc. So the Edolas arc covers chapters 166 to 199, while it covers anime episodes 76 to 95. Now, before we get into the main reasoning of the Edolas arc, some background information is before the Edolas arc starts, we see Fairy Tail's strongest wizard show up to the guild, and that is Mr. Gildarts himself. Now, he returns back to Magnolia after doing a century quest, which we later find out by the end of the story, which there's a whole another series for Fairy Tail, the spinoff series, 100-Year Quest. Essentially, it's a 100-year quest, but they call it a century quest because they haven't come up with the name at that point in the time. Now, he comes back from a century quest where he's actually failed it, and he actually tells Natsu to come see him. When Natsu actually goes to see him, he goes on to make a mention about him running into a dragon, which this dragon messed him up, like took out his arm and his legs, essentially, hinting at a black dragon, which is essentially a foreshadow to Acnologia that will be appearing in the next arc. And the thing is, essentially, he kind of tells Natsu, like, listen, it isn't a good idea to mess with this dragon because this dragon is on some other level and this dragon cannot be destroyed and everything. But Natsu, obviously gun-ho on trying to find Igneo, doesn't really listen and take his advice. And that's the thing. The one thing about Gildarts I will say is the fact that Gildarts is like the long-lost father Natsu never had, especially after the Igneo stuff and everything. So I like the fact that Gildarts is like a father figure to Natsu. We see some flashbacks and stuff like that, and you can see that clearly Natsu has a huge respect / love for Gildarts. Because, like I said, it's like after Igneo left and he found a new fatherly-like figure in him. Anyways, that's the thing. So now we start off with getting to the main, obviously the main Edolas portion of the arc. And essentially the main, point of the arc centers around Carla. Essentially, kind of, as we know, Carla, this entire, series up until this point has kind of been a character that I guess you can say hasn't really been intrigued or really cares about what the other guildmates do. More importantly, she only cares about Wendy and really her own safety. And eventually, even though in some parts in the past it was warranted that she would get mad at Happy, here she kind of just blows up in his face for no apparent reason and gets very upset at him because she's just annoyed and sick with him. And it's especially stemming from the fact that he doesn't know what his purpose is here and everything. And she even goes on to tell him, like, if you really think you're gonna protect Natsu without knowing what your purpose is, you might as well kick rocks because you're never gonna protect him, which was kind of a harsh type of thing. Honestly, she was being kind of rude to him and stuff like that. So yeah, but this makes Wendy chase after her. And because of this, they run into Mistigan, who we all know is Jalal, but it is later revealed that the Jalal here is the Jalal that Wendy knew back when she was a kid, when they went on the whole traveling stuff and everything. Now, Jalal tells her, actually, I'm going to say Mistigan. Now, Mistigan tells Wendy to essentially leave Magnolia because it's already too late and the Anima's going to come take Fairy Tale and Magnolia away. But Wendy is trying to go save her guildmates, but she barely just gets to Fairy Tale, and she sees it essentially swept away alongside all of the other Magnolia. And essentially, um, we see this beam essentially take everything away, and she's left all on her lonesome. Now, she thinks she's all alone, but that's when we see Natsu is there, and then Happy eventually shows up. Now, Carla, because of this, says that they were sent on a mission from this queen to do something, that a mission that Carla had abandoned and stuff like that. But essentially, Carla, which makes Carla also understand the fact that why she's also frustrated with Happy is the fact that Happy didn't know the purpose of this mission and everything. Now, Carla tells Wendy and Natsu that they have to essentially, that their guildmates essentially went into this other world, their home world, Edolas, and everything, which essentially, is on the brink of losing all its magic and everything. So they have to go there and try to save their friends and get them back. Which again, like I said, this Happy makes a mention that he never heard of anything, which again, that's why Carla doesn't really respect him. So anyways, they fly up into the black hole, and they are transported to Edolas. And Edolas is a kind of interesting looking, land area. You got floating islands and stuff like that, and it's actually pretty cool and everything. But the moment they get there, Happy and Carla, they lose the ability to fly because there's barely any magic power. And after some, I guess, walking around and stuff like that, they come across the Fairy Tale Guild and everything. But the only thing is, once they get in there, they see that, yes, even though it is the Fairy Tale Guild and they see some of their guildmates, Carla eventually deducts that, well, guess what? This isn't their guild because they're different. And essentially we find out this fairy tale is the Edolas version of the fairy tale, which we find out is a dark guild because essentially magic is all outlawed thanks to the kingdom. And essentially we see like different personality characters, like Gray. He likes to wear a lot of clothes and he's simping over Juvia. Lucy's a little bit more, I guess you could say, hardened and I guess aggressive to an extent. Juvia wants nothing to do with him, kind of unlike her other self, her Earthland self, where she's kind of morally a girl that kind of just carefree and does whatever she wants. Here, she's like a respectful, delicate lady that doesn't want to do most of anything. But anyways, they see the mentions, they see the differences and everything. How Edolas Wendy is much older than current Wendy. And she has the things that Wendy still wishes she could have, which is the big bosoms. But anyways, they have to essentially run away because eventually find out too, another difference is the fact that this fairy tale doesn't have Urza, because Urza in Edolas works for the kingdom, and she is known as the fairy hunter Urza Nightwalker and stuff like that. Now, another important fact is the fact that the people in Edolas, whenever they see Carla and Happy, they get afraid and they call them Exceeds and stuff like that, like there's some sort of gods or something to them and everything. So yeah, now after a while, Natsu is getting berated by Edolas Lucy, and eventually he sees Lizana, and it's looking like he has this emotional thing with Lizana. Now we'll get over to Lizana by the end of this arc, and then it will explain her story and everything. Now, after all this stuff that happens, Natsu and Wendy tell the others that they're not from Edolas and they're from another world called Earthland, and they are here to save their friends because, well, the kingdom took them away. Now, because of this, at first, their guild is like, are you insane? We're not going to help you take down the freaking kingdom because we're like the last guild remaining and we're on the run, so you guys can do what you need to do. But Edolas Lucy is kind of inspired by what Natsu and Wendy, in terms of their passion for, obviously, to save their guildmates. She sees it and she's like, okay, I'll help you get to the kingdom as fast as I can and stuff like that. And that's where we kind of see the differences in magic. Now, unlike Earthland wizards, where essentially they have magic power imbued in them, how magic works in Edolas is mostly through items and weapons and stuff like that. That is really outlawed by the king because the king's really, which we find out later, is trying to save all the magic power for himself and everything. But this is the difference between Edolas and Earthland, the fact that, well, you know, Earthland magic users, fair are wizards, they essentially have magic power imbued with them, so they can create their own magic power. Here in Edolas, they run essentially, you know, magic and Edolas runs on like a fuel service type of thing, like if it's like as if it's like gas or something or oil or something like that to them. So something like that. So eventually they go to this like black markets dealer and they buy these weapons, which they end up using all of it when they run to the Royal Army. And when they run away, they see they see their friend Lucy, Earthland Lucy, getting captured, and we see that Lucy manages to use her celestial spirit keys, and she's able to use her magic and everything, which shocks obviously Wendy and Natsu. Now we later find out how she's able to use her magic. She didn't really think of it at the time, but it was mostly thanks to Mystigan, everything. But anyways, what happens is they go meet up somewhere, and essentially they go kind of rest a bit, but then we find out that Edolas Lucy leaves because essentially he's like, look, I've done all I can. You guys go do what you guys need to do and everything and stuff like that. Now, the reason also I forgot to mention, the reason why Lucy also survived the anima attack was the fact that Horologium, one of her celestial spirits, essentially protected her from being transported and stuff like that. And essentially, that's the reason why. And then she ran into Mystigan, and there goes on and so that. Now, obviously our friends, Natsu and the others, try to take an airship, but eventually they fail. But then we see a much more, I guess, wimpier Natsu Dragneel show up after when he steps out of his car. He ends up saving them and takes them to the kingdom and stuff like that. And again, another thing is we see that his car runs on essentially magic, which is like honestly like gasoline there and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. Again, it was still pretty cool to see the Edolas members of Fairy Tail because they're all different in their each and every ways. It's still pretty cool. I like the fact that Edolas Natsu, when he's driving a car, he's all cool and he acts like regular Natsu we know in Earthland. But when he steps out of it, he kind of turns into a wimpy kind of little sissy and stuff like that. But yeah, anyways, two, we also see that Gajel's in Edolas, and we see that he's been interacting with his counterpart in Edolas to come up with a plan to save his friends. Now, when Natsu, Wendy, and Lucy get into the city, they see the king essentially, I guess, promoting the fact that they're going to get their magic power, and they see the Lacrima, and they see the king essentially attack that Lacrima. It gets Natsu a little bit pissed off, but Lucy calms him down, saying they will get their revenge and they will save their friends and stuff like that. Now, the thing is, Carla ends up getting some visions about getting secret routes to the kingdom, and essentially their plan is, well, guess what? We can find a way to turn the Lacrima back to our friends if we can find a way to talk to the king. Essentially, what the plan is, they're going to use Gemini to be able to transform into the king, so they can use Gemini's memories of the kings, so they can find a way to transform, obviously, the Lacrima back into really the guild and help their friends and stuff like that. But by taking that successful path and breaking down all the barriers, the only problem with that is they end up getting caught by the Royal Army, where the Royal Army thanks Happy and Carla for essentially setting up Natsu and the others and stuff like that. And that's when things kind of get freaking wacky and things kind of go from, I guess you can say, good to worse. Now, Happy and Carla, they wake up on the island of Extalia, which is where all these other cats like them live. And again, the cats in this world are called X-Seeds and stuff like that, which they're different from regular cats because obviously the interesting part is, well, why are these cats in Earthland talking while you see an episode where Gosh is trying to find a cat partner? He can't find, he just sees regular cats and everything and stuff like that. So essentially they wake up. Nichia, who is the counterpart to Ichia, but he's an X-Seed here, and this other cat named Naughty, essentially, tell him, hey, you're going to go see the queen because you guys were successful on your mission. You're going to go see Queen Shagat. Now, excuse me. Essentially, what we later find out is the fact of why we did what we did, and essentially, they said, well, guess what? You were kind of imbued within the fact given from our queen, that you were told that you were guys were sent to Earth, and you were told thanks to the queen to kill the dragon slayers. And the reason why you can't really remember it is because it's kind of been foggy for you, but the queen kind of imbued your mind. And guess what? She kind of controls you like you're a puppet and everything and stuff like that. And they're hearing all this, and they're obviously heartbroken because they're like, wait, we were supposed to kill our dragon slaying partners? What the hell's going on here? Now, hold on a quick second, guys, before I continue this discussion. Okay, back from that quick little break. But because of this, they're essentially, just shocked. Now, Carla, she kind of falls over and she's just can't believe what she's hearing. The fact that she's essentially been used like a puppet and everything. But then this is when we get one of the most powerful moments of Happy, which I would say is probably from what I can remember of the entire fairy tale story, was probably his best moment out of all the moments Happy has gotten. I think this is one of his standout best moments. And the fact that they gave this moment to a character that, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, he's really kind of a mascot type of character for, like, obviously, advertising, and really just a side character and stuff like that. But to see that obviously image to where, Happy's like, we're not your puppets, when we're not going to be used by you. We're fairy tale wizards. And you're wrong if you think I would ever, turn on my friend and stuff like that. Again, very powerful scene there. This is also the scene where we finally have essentially Carla finally calling Happy by his name Happy instead of giving him the typical name Tomcat, which we get the development for Happy and the development for Carla, having much more of a respect for Happy going forward. In the story and everything. Eventually, Happy takes Carla. They run away. They eventually are given the titles named as Fallen, because they're going against the queen, essentially. And essentially, they fall down. They run into two other Exceeds, which was later revealed are Happy and who are Happy's parents. And essentially, the thing is, throughout this whole scene, throughout this whole part of this arc, essentially it's where Happy says, yeah, what happened in the past happened, but listen, at the end of the day, we're still fairy tale wizards, and we're still our friends, and we can't give up on our friends and stuff like that. And because of that gives a reignited passion within Carla to go help Wendy and the others and save her fairy tale friends. And that's when, because they finally accepted who they are, which are Exceeds, they are essentially able, their wings grow back, and they're essentially able to start flying again. Now, we come back to the castle, and King Faust essentially finds out, obviously, about the thing about wizards from Earthland having magic stored in their bodies. So essentially, he plans to extract the Dragon Slayer's magic, Natsu and Wendy, for his ultimate goal. He also tells them, listen, guess what? You can kill that other Earthling girl, Lucy, and stuff like that. So Lucy, before she's dropped to her death, tries to convince Urza Nightwalker, like, hey, you're just like my Urza. You have a heart. I know it's in there. There's good in you. But obviously, Urza's like, well, guess what? I don't care, because this is the reason why they call me the Fairy Hunter, and that's why I kill fairy tale wizards. But Happy and Carla managed to come in and save Lucy. Now, at first, they try to trick Urza, I'm going to call her Nightwalker. They try to trick Nightwalker into thinking that Carla essentially is a princess, which she kind of is. But because Lily and some other guards come in, they say they're Fallens. Don't listen to them. Which kind of starts the whole Urza kind of getting pissed off out for essentially blood, because I swear, Urza Nightwalker gets played so many damn times in this arc alone. It just pisses her off so much and everything. But essentially, it's looking like Dot's back because they're getting chased, but also the Royal Exceed army is showing up. And then that's when King Faust is like, okay, this is it. Just screw everybody. And that's when King Faust executes or starts up their secret plan, which is Code ETD, which is Exceed Total Destruction. Essentially, the thing is, by having the power of the giant lacrima, they got from Earthland and for Magnolia, what they plan to use is they plan to use this dragon cannon to, hook up to the lacrima and then eventually smash it into Extalia, essentially hoping to create not only, I guess, excess amount of magic between Extalia and the giant lacrima to fuel their obviously magic resources. And it's kind of epped up when you think about it and stuff like that. Now, eventually, Lucy and the others escape, but they're eventually cornered again by Nightwalker. But then that's when we see our Urza and Gray show up to save them. Urza, Scarlet fights off with Urza Nightwalker, which they have somewhat similar techniques. Urza, obviously, we know can equip her armor, but in this world, Nightwalker can equip her spear and make it into different types of weapons and stuff to help her out. I think while on the other end, Gray and Lucy eventually, go save Natsu. Yeah, Gray and Lucy end up go saving Natsu and Wendy. Now, Gray explains how he and Urza was able to come back. It was thanks to Gajul using Dragon Slaying magic on the Lacrima to break them out. Also, the reason why they're able to use magic is the fact that they got these X balls, which are like magic pills that were given from Mystigan, that are able to have obviously wizards from Earthland use their magic in Edolas and stuff like that. So nice way and everything. Anyways, that's when Lucy kind of recover. They eventually find out the entire plan. Wendy and Carla go up to Extalia to warn the other X-Seeds about the impending doom, the impending destruction of Extalia, while Natsu, Happy also goes up to with Gajul to go show him where the giant lacrima was, because that's where him and Carla earlier in the arc saw it. While Natsu, Lucy, and Gray, they all go to essentially stop the dragon cannon from being fired and also find another way to save their friends, and stuff like this. And this is where they kind of get into their individual fights. Natsu ends up fighting Hughes in kind of an amusement park area. But it was all right for what it was, but nothing really special. It was kind of at first it was Natsu and Lucy versus Hughes. It was kind of more for comedic purposes and stuff like that. So that's kind of what that fight is. Gray ends up fighting Sugar Boy. We'll get to the end of that fight there. And Lucy ends up, after getting split up from Natsu, ends up fighting Pyro, who is chasing Coco because Coco finds out about the whole Code ETD plan. But the only reason why she doesn't want to fire is because she sees her friend Lily on there fighting, obviously, Gajul, and she doesn't want her friend Lily to die. And eventually this changes Coco's mind, so she's like, why do we need magic power when we could just have everlasting peace? Or let me rephrase that. She's like, why can't we have everlasting magic when we can just have everlasting peace? Essentially, Coco's saying, I think we're taking this a little bit too far now. I think I'd rather just have peace and everything. But obviously, Lucy fights Byro with the help of Virgo a bit, and then I guess her new whip weapon. She manages to help take Byro down. Also, Natsu kind of, after defeating Hughes, kind of takes out Byro himself too. Now, in the fight with Sugar Boy, Gray is fighting with the key because eventually Sugar Boy gets the key from Coco. And essentially gets to the point where it comes to stalemate, where they both got hands on the keys, but Gray's willing to destroy. But Sugar Boy's like, you can't destroy it, because if you destroy it, you want to find a way to free your friends, and that's the only way to free your friends. But eventually, Gray's like, yeah, right, whatever, I'll take my chances. He destroys the key, and he just shows Sugar Boy, well, guess what? I can just make a replica because I've already seen what the key looks like and everything. But anyways, after that, Natsu actually meets up with Gray. Then we see Urza Nightwalker show up, and essentially looks like they got captured. But we later find out it's a trap set up by the real Urza. We find out that, real Urza was pretending to be Nightwalker, and they're holding the king hostage to try to get the royal army to fire to turn their friends back to normal. But Nightwalker, the real Nightwalker, shows up, screws that whole thing up. Because of it, it lets the king free, and that's when the royal army fires the real cannon on the real target, and that's when you see the giant lacrima start to be pushed over to Extalia in its destruction. Now, and what Wendy and Carla are doing is they're trying to convince the X-Seeds from obviously getting off the island and move to safety, but the Xyz don't believe them and say, essentially, why would we be scared when we have this all overwhelming power and we're stronger than the humans and stuff like that. So that's when they kind of start throwing rocks at them and everything. But then that's when Queen Shargot shows up, and then that's when she reveals everything. Her and the elders essentially revealed the fact that what they did was all a lie, and essentially the whole facade was the fact that since Queen Shagat can see into the future and have these like premonition types of things, she essentially could use it to where she could determine if humans should die or humans should, live and everything. And that's, because, and essentially that was a way to trick the humans to thinking, oh, bless me, she had this overwhelming power and she's very strong and stuff like that because she can choose like, oh, this human dies and this human doesn't and stuff like that. Also, too, we find out the reason why they took this approach is because back in the past, Xyz were kind of treated like, I guess, trash, essentially, and people mocked them for it. So they found a lie to get them back. Now, Shargot tries to tell Carla to kill her, but Carla's like, why should I kill you when I could just fight for, what I believe in, fight for my friends from Fairy Tale, and fight for a place now I can now call home, now that I found it out. So with the renewed passion, she flies over to the Lacrima that's being pushed over to Extolia, and she tries to fight her hardest alongside the other Fairy Tale members that show up later. And then because of this manages to convince other Xyz like Naughty to eventually do the same thing. And that's when you have essentially all the Xyz start to fly over and help their city not be destroyed, their home Extelia not be destroyed. And also at the same time, Panther Lily's seeing all this. And we find out some backstory to Panther Lily, who is a very buff-looking Xyz, but we find out essentially he was exiled from Extelia because he brought in a human child, which was later revealed to be after they managed to push away the giant Lacrima. We later find out that boy was actually Jalal / Mystigan, which we later find out is a prince and everything. Eventually, what happens is our heroes get bombarded by obviously the royal army, who's like, okay, we're going to take you out once and for all now. This sets up some of the final fights. Urza Scarlet versus Urza Nightwalker Part 2 again. This is when we have King Foss kind of take things into his own hands, and he uses the Dorma Onum armor, which is essentially a mechanical dragon, and he's using it to turn other Xyz and as well as other royal guards turning Xyz into Lacrimas and everything. That's what I forgot to also mention back then. Earlier, they had this one beam and code ETD where they just turned all these Xyz into giant Lacrimas and stuff like that. But in order to stop King Foss, essentially Natsu, Gajil, and Wendy all team up together to take him down. So we get the 3 Dragon Slayers. And what I like about this fight, it is one of my favorite fights in the Fairy Tale franchise, is the fact that, you see the development and obviously Wendy and Gajil. And Wendy, we see that, well, she's willing not to be the scaredy cat kid she once was, because we saw an arc ago, she didn't want nothing to do when it came to fighting strong enemies and helping out. This arc kind of started at the end of the Arachno and Sace arc when she helped to take down the one Lacrima and everything. But I like the fact that they made Wendy much more confident in her abilities to stand up and fight alongside her dragon slaying counterparts in Natsu and Gajil. And for Gajil, the fact that he's willing to cooperate and work with Natsu and Wendy is much more better, because we remember back in the Battle of Fairy Tale arc, he didn't even want to work alongside Natsu and everybody, Natsu against Loxus. And here he's like, listen, I think we're gonna have to fight them together. And obviously Natsu too, we already know he's got the development like, yeah, I guess you're right, so we got to take him on together. So I really do like that whole development for Wendy and Gajil, because it really shows how far they have grown over time. It shows that Gajil has been much more appreciative and likes the fact that he's been in Fairy Tale, and he knows that, well, guess what? Fairy Tale's a much more different guild than Phantom Lord ever was. The fact that Wendy actually is taking the courage to fight and help her friends because, hey, she's got to save them. Guess what? She's doing it. And it was a pretty entertaining fight. I like the fight. It's actually one of the better fairy tale fights. And actually, for a final fight, it doesn't have that whole, I guess you can say, power of friendship thing everybody complains about. It was just essentially just straight out will taking down a king and everything and stuff like that. So yeah, now in terms of the Urza Nightwalker versus um Urza fight, essentially the whole fight essentially is kind of a battle of philosophies where essentially Nightwalker's afraid of losing all the magic and afraid of not doing nothing with that, and afraid of Edolas not being able to do anything about that and stuff like that. While our Urza tells her is convincing her and stuff like that about essentially having the importance of having ones you care about, having loved ones, and having friendship over magic. Because listen, magic isn't the end game for everything and everything. Yeah, it isn't the end game, you know, to have absolute power. At the end of the day, it's about caring about the people you love and the friends you make along the way, which is much more valuable than what magic could ever accomplish. And we see it end their fight ends up in a draw, but eventually gets to the point where Nightwalker eventually sees the errors of her ways and finally realizes that yeah, immense magic power isn't everything. Making relationships with friends and other people are what matter more. Essentially, kind of a real world element of saying, yeah, you can have all this rich fame and glory and all this money, but at the end of the day, you know, having those friends and creating those relationships and those bonds, that's what's more important than, I guess you can say, things that are honestly not as important about connections you make. Now, Mystigan, he talks with Panther Lily, and essentially he comes up with a plan to do reverse anima, which essentially is reversing the magic power back into Earthland, essentially taking all the magic out of Edolas. But to do it, they need to come up with a villain, and he's willing to do that and have Panther Lily become the savior. But eventually, because of Nadi, Nadi eventually tells Natsu and the others after they take down King Faust and everything. And essentially, Natsu, Wendy, and Gajul pretend to be demons or villains. And essentially, Mystigan's totally against this. But the thing is, he eventually clicks on because he knows, hey, this has to happen and everything. And essentially, Natsu gives him the fairy tale goodbye. I'm not going to rephrase what the fairy tale, you know, goodbye stuff and everything is, but because I didn't write that down in my notes. But he essentially does that, and because of it, it shows the people that, well, guess what, you know, you don't need magic power to defeat enemies and stuff like that, which, you know, inspires the people to say, oh, we can live without magic and everything and stuff like that. So anyways, the other, you know, Earthland wizards and even Exceeds, because they have magic power imbued in their bodies, essentially they're all sent to Earthland and they all say their goodbyes and everything. We cut over back to Edolas. And we see that they're essentially rebuilding. After they essentially are rebuilding all the damage that happened with the king and all that stuff. Now, Jalal, or Mystigan, he essentially tells the commanders that their punishment is essentially helping the kingdom rebuild, and that's their way to atone for their sins for what they did. While King Faust is essentially banished from Edolas and stuff like that as he moves on. And King Faust also eventually learns the errors of his ways when he did. Now, when we come back to Earthland, we see that the Exceeds are there and they have a renewed purpose. And their purpose is the fact of what the Queen says, Queen Shagat says. She says, essentially, the thing is, the reason why she sent some Exceeds into about 100 Exceeds into Earthland is because, well, she had a premonition of seeing Extalia's destruction. So she wanted the Exceeds to live on, and that's why she sent on 100 of them to Earthland. And essentially, the Exceeds have a renewed passion to be able to essentially find those Exceeds that have been in Earthland for all of these times. We also get, again, this is the part where we get revealed that Happy, his parents, Lucky, and I know his mom starts with an M. They reveal that, well, guess what? That's Happy's parents. And also, it was pretty much a done deal that we knew that Queen Shagat was the mother to Carla, which is later revealed after they left, because Carla essentially acts somewhat similar to her, and as well as the fact that they have the same type of we can see into the future type of premonition type of stuff. So it makes sense to why they're related, and plus they're the same color of cat and everything, just like how Happy and his mother is. But the X-Seeds say their goodbye. We see a much smaller chibi form of Panther Lily, who pleads his allegiance to Fairy Tale and accepting to be Gajo's partner. And he also says, "Oh yeah, I also brought this other person." And we see that Lazana is here. Now the thing with Lazana is this isn't the Edolas version of Lazana that got transported here. This is the Earthland Lazana that was presumed dead. And essentially what happened is after Elfman hit Lazana, essentially they were over an anima circle and Lazana got pulled into the anima. And because the Edolas version of Lazana apparently died, she walked into the Fairy Tale Guild thinking acting like as if, well, guess what? She was their version of Lazana. And by the time she was flying away because the magic power was going to Earthland, the Edolas version of Mira Jane and Elfman always knew that she was a different Lazana and stuff like that. And because of this makes Lazana come back home. We have a very emotional reuniting scene with her, Mira Jane, and Elfman. And we get some we get also her reuniting in the aftermath of this arc with the guild. And essentially Makarov says, "You can tell me about your story a little bit later and everything." So yeah, we also do kind of find out some secret information. The fact that, well, it seems like apparently King Foth, well, Natsu was thinking about it after Makarov asked Natsu, like, what was I like in the Edolas world? Essentially, Natsu felt like King Foth had a kind of familiarity with Makarov. So I'm guessing it's implied that King Foth was the Edolas counterpart of Makarov, which is kind of interesting to think about. And I think if you watch, I don't know about the sub, but if I watch the dub version of this, King Foth and Makarov have the same exact voice actor. So I think that is the counterpart to them. I did like seeing their other guild mates talk about the other, counterparts and how they looked. I love the whole fact that they made fun about Natsu. I liked how Biska and her soon-to-be husband, find out that, oh wait, we were being together, which is kind of hinting at the fact that they had feelings for each other and stuff like that. So yeah, but that's kind of where the arc ends, and kind of the arc where it leaves off on a cliffhanger is we go over to some island or something where we see this guy in black, and essentially he's looking to meet up with Natsu soon. But the only catch is things that come around him dies, and he says, "Get away from me, stay away from me, otherwise you're gonna die." And he ends up killing like some of these wolves, and then even some of the landscaping trees and stuff like that. Now, that starts obviously, which we all know is Zareth, but that starts his little, I guess, appearance in the series of this storyline till the end of the main original series, and that obviously leads into the Tenro Island arc. But other than that, this arc was really good. I really enjoyed the Edolas arc, and rewatching it again was just a blast because this arc has a lot of heart, a lot of emotional moments in it, and it really goes to show and kind of teach people a lesson, like, kind of small things and stuff like that are really not important. What kind of is important is making the relationships within your lives and, being able to spend those moments with others and everything about that. I like the development that they gave Happy and Carla in this arc. The fights really near the tail end of this arc were probably the fights that I enjoyed the most and everything. But this really was a really good arc, and this is why this is one of my top 3 arcs in Fairy Tale. It's my 3rd favorite arc all time in Fairy Tale. with 2 other arcs ahead of it, which are the Grand Magic Games arc and the Tartaros arc. But this arc was at one point one of my favorite arcs, if not my favorite arc. But then obviously things change and stuff like that as you see future arcs. But this arc was really good, and I very much enjoyed this arc. And I can't wait to see more Fairy Tail because hey, going through this rewatch is great. But just seeing everything that happened in this arc was really good and everything. Albeit, I am glad, especially if this is a spoiler. Sorry. Click off the video. Goodbye. I'll see you guys for the Tenro Island arc review. But it is cool that even though we thought at this point in time, or at that point in time after watching it, or whenever you first watch it, you think, oh, that's it, Edolas. We're never going to see Mist again and the other Edolas characters again. Well, fun fact, if you read 100 Year Quest for Fairy Tail, the fairy tale actually goes back to Edolas for a quick bit before they head to another world. And we actually see, obviously, what the Edolas characters have been up to, later in the future and stuff like that. But I thought it was pretty cool. Even though it looked like it was the end of Edolas, I was glad that in 100 Year Quest we went back to it, even if it was for about a few chapters. But it was still good to go back and see Edolas again. But other than that, that's kind of it. So next time I'm going to be reviewing the Tenro Island arc, which essentially starts the arc of changing the entire story from the ground up and making this story eventually get into the kicking point of its arc after arc connectivity story till you get to the final season, or the Alvarez Empire arc of Fairy Tail. And by that time, I will have hit the halfway point of the storyline. Honestly, when you look back at it, Fairy Tail is honestly a pretty short story. It's still long, but it's honestly, with the arcs that are in it, it's kind of a pretty short thing. Because now, if you take out the anime filler arcs, just think of it. You got Eisenwald, Galuna Island, Phantom Lord, the Loki and the Tower of Heaven arc, or really the Tower of Heaven arc, the Battle of Fairy Tail, Arashi Seis arc, Edolas, then Tenro Island, taking out the filler arcs. You got the Grand Magic Games, then obviously the Tartaros arc. Then you have essentially the Alvarez Empire arc. Right then and there, that's halfway of the season. We're literally almost halfway there. And again, like I said, the Tenro Island arc, it changes the entire fabric of the story going forward. And in some cases, it makes it even more entertaining to watch. Tenro Island is one of my favorite arcs. I'll speak more about that. It's definitely on the cusp of the top 3, but it's definitely in my top 5 because it changes the game for the story going forward, making these characters go into bigger, territories of more feared magic power and everything, especially with the fact that this is when Zareth really makes his true first appearance, and Acton Logia makes his first appearance here, and a whole bunch of other stuff and everything that happens. But we'll get into that when we talk about that arc. But other than that, if you guys liked the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts on this arc review for the Edolas arc. Where does the Edolas arc rank in Fairy Tail arcs for you? As well as hit that subscribe button to get more Fairy Tail arc reviews. As well as when you do hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell icon so you can get any notifications to your devices whenever I upload to the channel. Other than that, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day or night when you're checking out this video. Until then, guys, I'll see you guys on the next video, which will be the Tenro Island arc review. Till then, guys, peace.